professor in the Department of Healthcare Organization and Policy in the UAB School of Public Health, and also the director of the Sparkman Center for Global Health. And so we're very excited to be here today to talk to you about our pilot grant opportunities. And also I'll be co-presenting with Dr. Anna Helova, who is our program director for the Sparkman Center. Dr. Helova, you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Anna Helova, and I work as a program director in the Sparkman Center for Global Health, and I'm overseeing this activity, the center pilot projects. I'm also teaching the global health cases, so global health classes in School of Public Health, and I'm conducting research internationally. So, welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for coming today.
Great. So I think we'll probably just jump right into it. And we have sort of an overview of the pilot project mechanism and some general sort of tips and advice on how to be successful. And then we'll have some time for some question and answer, and hopefully some experiences from some of our grantees who are on the meeting today. So I will give it to Dr. Helova to take it away.
You? Oh, you're not done. Okay. Great. Okay. So we would like to start with the mission of the Sparkman Center. So it is to contribute to solutions of health problems in less developed countries and settings through undergraduate and graduate level public health education, research, and training programs. This is important because our pilot projects, the proposals have to be aligned with the Sparkman Center mission to be considered for funding through this mechanism. The pilot projects are basically the internal funding mechanism for research projects, public health practice, and global health and development projects that support the Sparkman's mission of promoting health of people in resource-constrained countries and settings. All of the projects, we are expecting that all of the projects have a strong research or evaluation component. And this year, we're a little bit constrained. We all know what's going on in the world, but we still anticipate funding up to 2 applications of up to $20,000 each in 2021. So who is eligible for these awards? So any UAB faculty member and fellows with advanced degrees. So for example, the MD, PhD, or DRPH are eligible. So you do not have to be a faculty member at UAB, but you do have to have some kind of one of these advanced degrees. The integration of early stage investigator is really important. We are looking for the team building approach. And we are also looking for incorporation of community partners and stakeholders in the project. Preference will be given to those who never had an R01, which is an NIH research award. So preferences will be given to those who never had an R01 in global health field or are new to global health research. If you are an established investigator with previous R01 awards, but you are seeking a new direction, you are eligible for this award. So just because you are not an early stage investigator doesn't mean that you are not eligible for this award. But all of those other eligibility criteria have to be met. All projects should have a very clear next steps in terms of future opportunities to lay the groundwork for future larger projects. So we do prefer the projects that would, for example, say that we are collecting this pilot data to then be able to apply for an NIH grant later on. So that part has to be clearly laid out in the proposal. Let me just In terms of the timeline, we will release our program announcement on December 1st, 2020. However, it will be very similar, so we don't expect any major changes from the previous years. So feel free to even browse our website now for the previous announcements. The deadline for the 2-page concept proposal is February 1st, 2021. We will inform those who are advancing to full applications by March 1st, and then the full applications are due May 1st. Awards will be announced by May 31st, and the funding would start on June 1st, 2021. So we provide an application packet that will be available in a Word and PDF format on the Sparkman website. This application packet contains the forms that are adapted from NIH research proposals forms, but they are much shorter and are a little bit adjusted to our needs. It's the concept proposal due February 1st will include phase page, concept research plan, including the project description, significance and innovation section, and then that important team building component. And the biographical sketches are using a standard NIH template. We will notify those who are advancing to the full proposal competition phase by email by March 1st, as mentioned before. The full applications would then be due May 1st, 2021. And as I mentioned, this would be upon the invitation into this round, and the full application, full proposal application packet would include phase page, budget and budget justification, research plan, bibliography and references, research environment, protection of human subjects section, if this is applicable, biographical sketches, and letters of support from your collaborators. And we will go into more details as we continue with this presentation. So who are our previous awardees? So what are we, what kind of projects have been previously funded? So as you can see from the map, in 2019, we funded 5 proposals. One of them was based in Latin America, 1 in Africa, and 3 in Southeast Asia. In terms of the investigators, they were from School of Public Health, from College of Arts and Sciences, and from School of Medicine. So as you can see, we are not only looking for investigators based in School of Public Health. In terms of the topic theme, we funded the proposals that were focused on people with disabilities, on colorectal cancer and neck cancer, and also on neurodevelopment issues and surgery. In 2020, we were fortunate to still fund 2 proposals, and one of them is based in Asia, and one of them is based in Africa. The one in Asia focused on the refugees in Turkey, and the other one focused on congenital cytomegalovirus in Uganda. These investigators were from College of Arts and Sciences, School of Public Health, and School of Medicine. So as you can see, as long as you meet the eligibility criteria, we really welcome proposals from investigators from across the campus, and looking for that team collaboration. Okay. So to you now, Dr. Turan.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions up to this point?
And if you don't have a microphone and have a question, feel free to post that question in chat.
Yeah, so yeah, we'll try to address those at the end if they don't come in as we're talking. So, okay, so now we're just going to talk a little bit about how we review these pilot grants, and you can go to the next slide. So we have, in the past, we've convened a committee composed of UAB faculty members, again, from across campus, who have already funded international research and experience, and generally who are experienced in NIH, NSF, or other, formal review processes. So we are using a scoring rubric with this committee that is similar to the NIH review process. And so we look at the scientific impact of the project. We look at its significance, and it's likely to make, again, dealing with a significant issue that may make an impact on the field. We look at the investigators. We look at the innovation of the project. We certainly look at the scientific approach. We look at the environment where the research is going to be conducted. And we do look whether junior faculty and newer investigators are involved. And we assess the budget. So the committee comes together, we have primary, secondary, and tertiary reviewers, and we come together to discuss each application. Next slide. So, and these are really sort of standard criteria, but they're tweaked, of course, for our purposes. So for the scientific impact, we want to know, is there sound design of the proposed research and relevance to global health goals and priorities areas in less developed countries? And again, that important issue of whether the project is aligned with the strategic interests of the UAB Sparkman Center for Global Health. Next slide. Significance. Here we're looking at whether the project addresses an important problem or a critical barrier to progress in the field. And we're asking ourselves the question, if the aims of this project are achieved, how will scientific knowledge, technical capacity, or clinical practice be improved? And, how will the successful completion of these aims change the concepts, methods, technologies, treatments, services, or preventive interventions that drive this field? Next slide. Investigators, of course, we're just looking overall if the principal investigator, the collaborators, and the other researchers are well suited to the project. Do they have the qualifications, the experience, and the skills needed to carry out the project? And so when we're looking at early stage or new investigators, we look at their experience and training. And if they're established investigators, we look at their sort of long-term record of accomplishments. And, we really want to assess, does this PI have the potential to be an independent researcher focused on global health in less developed countries? Importantly, we would really like to see that investigators from the target country or population are meaningfully included in the project as investigators. So if you're, doing a study in Kenya, we want to see, investigators from Kenyan institutions and organizations also included as investigators on your study. And we do, again, we do want to give priority to, this is a pilot grant, it's meant to jumpstart something. So we want to give priority to junior investigators and those who are pursuing a new global health direction. Next slide. Innovation is another criteria that we look at. So is this project somehow challenging and shifting current paradigms by looking at either new concepts, new approaches, new methodologies, or maybe new instruments or interventions? And, are these novel? The population may also be novel that you're working with. And, it may be something new, or you may be refining it in a way that's new to the field. Next slide. As in most grants, the approach is usually kind of the key part. I mean, I think the significance and the approach are, really always the key things that drive overall scores. So here we're looking at the overall strategy, the methodology, and the analytical plans. And are they well reasoned? Are they rigorous? Will they actually be able to accomplish the aims of the project? And it's good to point out if there are any sort of potential pitfalls and what you might do in those situations. And, you know, how feasible is it, and how can you kind of manage the parts of it that might be kind of risky? And if the project does involve human subjects, which, you know, it often does, then we would like to see plans to address the protection of human subjects, and, you know, how you will include individuals on basis of sex, gender, race, ethnicity, and age. Next slide.
Okay, so what are some additional tips that we can give you? One of the most common mistake probably that we see is that the projects are just overly
Hello?
So sort of good guidance is this project, can I complete this project within the year? And can I fit can I fit within the $20,000 budgetary constraints? And then we are really looking to seeing how you justify your research question. So include so the list of investigators and their expertise, and explain how their expertise would contribute to the project. So again, this speaks to the feasibility of the project. Justify your sample size. So often there is a number, but there is no justification behind that number. So we really want to see some kind of sample size calculation, power calculations. If you can involve a biostatistician to a certain point, so that will serve to the justification of that sample size, that can really help. Again, don't be overly ambitious. This is a pilot project. We realize that, there has to be a nice balance between those two. We are looking for a strong research evaluation component of the project. And if there is a field data, we do want to see how you incorporated your international partner organization in those collection instruments, so in the design and conduct. Dr. Turan spoke about ethical approvals. So just know that we do not release the funding until the ethical approvals are in place. We do know that this takes a little bit longer, and I do offer, or we do as a center, offer our experience and tips if we can help in any way how to get this in place. So we are happy to share our knowledge and experience with you. In terms of the environment, again, this section just needs to speak about, do you have the scientific environment? Does your international partner have the environment that can contribute to the probability of success? And it really helps if you have the letters of support that can speak to this point. I think that we emphasize this again, but a lot through this presentation. But as I will just say that again, we do want to see the involvement of junior investigators on your team. In terms of the budget, we are looking for justification and the budget lines that would commensurate with the scope of work. So if you have a data collection, are there funds allocated to the data collection? If you need to travel, are there travel funds? Do you have the salary support for you and for the international investigators? Again, you don't have to have everything in the budget, but if you, for example, if you plan to travel and there is no travel funds, justify how you are going to cover the travel from different sources. We cannot emphasize this enough, but we are looking for a strong international partnership and involvement of target community. So our expectation is that the international partner is involved in the design and conduct of the study. This is to ensure really that so that your study is appropriate and will be accepted in the community where you are conducting research, and eventually you would be able to actually implement the results in this community. Funds in the budget should be allocated to a certain extent to the international partner organization. Again, if they are not, please justify why they are not included. Perhaps you have some other funding mechanism how this is covered. The application should include a letter of support documenting the prior relationship, detailing how this international support will serve the grant. It's nice to have a proof of prior collaboration, manuscripts, activities, some kind of program. If you do not have that, really make sure that you justify how this relationship will contribute to this proposal and how it would be feasible to conduct this study with this new partner. Again, members of the target population should be meaningfully involved in the design and conduct of the study. Okay, so international partners and target population, important to involve. And here comes Turan.
Okay, so now I'm just going to share some kind of general tips for successful grants and things that are these, and these are not necessarily specific to our pilot awards, but just kind of general advice that I think helps in writing good grant proposals. So next slide. So as much as we maybe wish it didn't, but grant presentation and appearance do really count. And so you're competing with a lot of other people and you have busy reviewers who don't have time to dig through something that's not visually easy to read and understand. So if you're, a high quality grant should have simple and lively writing style. It should have the key points laid out very clearly. Use bold, use boxes, use any way to help guide the reviewer through the grant. You should have clear organization with section headings and subheadings. And really, it shouldn't feel crowded. It's the temptation, of course, to try to fit as much as you can in what is a relatively short proposal, but it's really not to your advantage to have a very crowded, dense grant. Leave some white space, make it easy on the eyes. And, when you can, use visual illustrations instead of a lot of dense text. So figures, boxes, tables, diagrams, all those really make the grant visually appealing and easy for the reviewers to like. Next slide. And, there are some common mistakes that we see in a lot of grant applications, including the pilot grants that we've received for this mechanism. So someone who doesn't follow the directions, I mean, that's just a red flag. If the person can't even follow the directions in the application packet, it doesn't give confidence for the science. So any sloppiness or lack of proofreading, not proofreading the spelling and the grammar. In some cases, it can be obvious that someone has cut and pasted from another grant, and there may actually be some wording in there that's not even applicable to this particular application. Again, something that's got very small font and very small margins just feels too crowded and takes too long to get to the point. We don't, it's generally not good to have something that's really densely academic, that's written like a journal paper. That's going to be too much. It's a different style of writing, which I think is hard for a lot of us academics to get used to, because it's more like selling your idea. I mean, you want to, of course, have good scientific evidence and backing for everything you say, but it's better to make your points concisely and strongly and clearly. Next slide. So again, some tips here on how you can make the grant look better. So if you know, in order to open up space, there's some sort of things you can play around to make it seem not so crowded and make it easier to read. So you can always play with the spacing between the paragraphs. Could be 3 point, 6 point. That sometimes is enough to allow you to get the stuff in that you need. You know, I always go through and cut the length at the end by making sure I don't have paragraphs that only have a few words on the last line. And you can always cut some words. You know, sometimes it seems impossible, but it's always possible. You can easily see that you've got some excess words in there. When you're doing tables or figures in boxes, you can put them only to one side of the page and play with your text wrapping around the boxes. So a table or figure doesn't have to take up like half of a whole page. And you can consider what you can appropriately move to other ancillary grant sections, like, well, human subjects or other parts of the application, without trying to, you know, you don't really want to see like you're trying to circumvent the rules by putting extra information, but there are some things that you can appropriately put in other sections without taking up your prime real estate in the main part of the grant. Next slide. Again, I'm mentioning visual tools, and this becomes more and more important as you move from the pilot stage to more advanced grants, but using diagrams and figures to show your conceptual framework, your study design, how the study flows, I think is really helpful. Use boxes to emphasize those key points. I often find that's really useful for the innovation section. Instead of using a lot of text, just put it in a box. These are the things that are innovative about this study. If you've got a lot of different questionnaire measures or other things that you're measuring in the study, use tables to present that detailed information on the studies, their reference, all sorts of background about those measures. And just make sure when you're using these visual tools to use high quality versions that look clear and sharp in the final PDF version. We sometimes struggle with that. And if possible, identify someone either on your team or in your school who has graphic design skills to help with these. It's not a skill that we all have, and I think it's something that UAB and our schools and departments should be able to help us with, because it does really make an impact. And just be careful, you know, don't make these visuals too complicated. Sometimes people do like crazy complicated diagrams of all the possible statistical associations between this and that. And it gets like, again, too much for the reviewers to absorb. It's always a challenge to fit them in, but make sure that the font is big enough to read when someone prints it out, because a lot of people are going to print out the grant and they're not going to be able to enlarge it on their big screen. So they need to be able to read it, and don't rely on color, because the reviewers may print it out in black and white, or they might be colorblind, as my husband often points out. So again, just some tips. Next slide. References are also important, and you know, usually there's no limitation on references, and you know, strongly recommend using EndNote or another reference manager. But even if you do use EndNote, you definitely need to check your references for repetitions and mistakes. And sometimes weird things happen in EndNote when you think you're, citing something about food insecurity, and you look in the reference list and it's something about, biochemical something. I don't know. I've seen that just recently, that somehow the wrong reference gets in there. And so it's really important to check those. And there also can be a lot of duplicates in EndNote. So just again, something that shows that you are taking care and that you're, a careful, rigorous person, and that kind of gives an idea that will carry over into your research. Okay, so I think those are sort of the end of our sort of tips and advice. And so we wanted now just to move to any questions that you might have about the priorities or the process. And we do have some of our current grantees in the meeting, Dr. Tina Reuter and Dr. Meghan Tipre, I believe. So any advice that they might have for anyone who's in attendance. And we can also think if anybody on the call has any other ideas or tips.
Yeah, I would also like to add that we are here for you and we are your friends. We really want the best proposals possible. And just like with NIH, if you have an idea for this pilot project, but you are not sure if you are eligible or if the project is a good fit, just send us a message and see. We'll be happy to provide our opinion on the subject. Also, when we advance the concept proposal to a full proposal, we provide brief notes, review notes to help you to make your full proposal even better. So again, we are here, we are your friend, and so please utilize us in the best manner. Okay, if you don't have a microphone, you can post your questions in the chat.
I just wanted to, go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to ask the grantees, can you please provide a brief description about your granted project? And then, because I would like to understand the scope of the project. So as an applicant, I don't want to be too ambitious as the presentation has laid out. So I just want a brief description of the granted project from the two grantees here. Thank you.
That's great. Dr. Reuter, can you give us a description of your project?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for this question. Thank you to the Sparkman Center for funding our project, which honestly is currently a little bit on hold, right, because of COVID. But the project is we're the ones who are doing assessing the health status and health situation of people with disabilities in Lima, Peru. And the project has multiple components. It's basically, well, in some ways, it's a replication of a project that we've done here in Birmingham. So the methodologies we have tested, and we've gotten some preliminary data. And the idea was to use the framework that we developed in a global South context. So basically, the biggest portion of our project, and that's the one that's currently on hold, is really to look at the status of the built environment in 3 neighborhoods in Lima, to look how accessible they are, like to assess how accessible they are and whether that impacts the health and social exclusion of people with disabilities. So We selected these Lima for a couple of reasons. One is Lima has signed and ratified the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. We have strong existing relationships with 2 universities there where we successfully completed projects before. So I can only reiterate what was said earlier, that these community relations really kind of make or break the success of your project. And then we were also collaborating with the Minority Health Research Training Program at UAB to have some of the students help with our data collection, in addition to people in Lima. So that's basically what we're doing. So in terms of methodologies, we're doing a walk audit. So we're doing a walk audits in these neighborhoods to assess the accessibility, including mapping marathons. We're doing surveys on neighborhood accessibility using tested scales, and then we also have some qualitative methods to get some more information, like to really have a picture that is culturally relative and will help us with the interpretation of the data. Our collaborators in Lima also are involved in like every step of the process. Like they were involved in the design of the project, and they will be involved in the data collection and analysis of our project. The project, as I said, is currently on hold because it really is important to have we decided that we have to be able to be there in person, or the data has to be collected in person, because the people we're working with are underserved communities that would not be available through Zoom, or and obviously you lose some of the data. So that's one of the downsides, I guess. But yeah, that's in a nutshell kind of what we're doing.
Great, thank you so much. Dr. Tipre, you want to give us
Yeah, sure. So hi, everyone. I'm Meghan Tipre, and our project was in Sri Lanka, or rather is in Sri Lanka. It focused on proximity to fly ash dump site and looking at infant neurodevelopment in children aged 1 to 3 years. So before I talk about the project, I want to just give you a brief overview of what really fly ash is. So you have the coal-powered power plants, and when you burn coal in the power plants, you have the residue that remains. It's very fine dust. So usually the power plants, they dump the dust in landfills, and in US, I mean, coal is used across several countries, so it's a common occurrence. But in US, say, those dump sites are much farther away from residential locations. But the site where we did our study, rather, it was very close, in close proximity to a residential area. So our collaborators in Sri Lanka, which is the University of Kelaniya, we have a very long time collaboration with them. My mentor, Dr. Nalini Satyakumar, she has worked with them for more than 10 to 15 years, and I've been part of the projects that we did in Sri Lanka for almost 10 years now. So, building on those collaborations, as Dr. Reuter said and Dr. Turan said, having a strong collaboration with your partnering institute in the LMIC is critical to have a successful project. So they were the ones who were really interested in, wanted us to see if we could develop some project along this focus area, because they were getting some feedback from the community saying that there may be some health effects from the fly ash exposure to so we designed this pilot project thanks to Sparkman Center for their funding. It was to really use proximity analysis. So we defined buffer zones around the community. So people who lived within, say, a 5-kilometer radius versus people who lived further away. We recruited 220 children, 110 in the closer group and 110 further away, and assessed. And the only way we determined their exposure was whether they lived very close to the site or whether they lived further away from the site. So we didn't have any environmental sampling or anything, which was not possible given the budget. And then we looked at infant neurodevelopment. And because our collaborators have been really trained in conducting Bailey scales, which are considered the gold standard for doing for assessing infant neurocognition and motor development. They had training from our previous projects, so we were able to utilize those resources with our partners, and we were able to actually have research assistants in Sri Lanka who did all the neurodevelopmental assessments. And because of COVID, I was not able to travel to Sri Lanka, but despite those limitations, we were actually able to do all the data collection, and we finished our data collection in September, and right now we are in the process of analyzing the data. And I think 15 days ago, I was able to present some preliminary results as well. So to answer your question, Van, I think having utilizing the resources that are strengths of your partners, especially given COVID is not going to go away in the next 6 months when you're planning your study, thinking about that and how you can coordinate those effects and having those conversations before you even write the proposal, thinking through the process and planning, because we had to work with the Ministry of Health and get permissions from them. So all that was sort of in place before we even submitted the proposal. So that really helped us to, once we had the IRB, which took a long time, so having that, again, factored into your planning, we were actually able to finish the study, at least the data collection part of the study. So we're very excited to see what the results look like and have a publication soon, and then expand the project. So that was also kind of factored into what thoughts, if we are seeing some good results, or how we can expand the study. So that also, we took that into consideration when we were writing this pilot project. So I hope I answered that question.
That's great, thank you. That was from both groups, great summary. And I was thinking maybe we'll talk to our grantees, and maybe if they give their permission and if it seems appropriate, we could perhaps have some successful proposals on our website as examples if people are willing to share them. We'll look into that. But I think that can give you also a good sense of the scope of what's possible to do with this kind of award. And being realistic, doing something feasible is always appreciated.
And building off of the strengths of both UAB partner and international partner, that's a big one. I also want to mention, Dr. Tipre mentioned that she had a workshop for Sparkman a few weeks ago. And additionally, we had another of our awardee, Dr. Bateman, whose study is based in Egypt, presenting. And both of those workshops were recorded, and the recording is available on our website, on the Sparkman website. So
right. that actually is a requirement for pilot grantees, that we request that you present your results back to the larger community. So
yeah. So Megan, what is your real sample size? And Tina, what is your expected sample size in the data collection?
So our sample size, we were lucky to get our targeted sample size of 220 children, 110 in each group. Well, because it was a pilot study and we really did not do a whole lot of sample size calculation, but we did have some power calculations that we did in the background. Yeah.
So for our study, we had our anticipated sample sizes for the surveys, 200 residents, and for the semi-structured interviews, it will be 30. And then in addition, we have a photo voice where we're working with local groups, so we didn't include those. But that's what it looks like.
Yeah, and that could just differ so much depending on the intensity, you know, of what you're doing, and whether you need to provide reimbursements to participants or not, and and the type of research that you're doing. So I think it needs to be well justified and feasible, but the sample could, you know, could range quite greatly. I wanted to address that, you know, in the past, a lot of people have also wanted to do more sort of educational projects or interventions, and we are in fact open to those. You know, so maybe you're doing I don't know, a series of trainings on, you know, quality of care for providers in, you know, slums in Karachi, I'm just saying. And we are open to those kind of projects, but we really need to see a strong evaluation component, and that this is not just doing a service, which, you know, these things can be great, and they can be great for capacity building and all these things, but we need to see that it's something that has a rigorous evaluation design, and then could potentially lead to scale up and bigger projects. So I think those kind of, we're open to a variety of types of global health and development projects, as long as we see that rigor in the evaluation and the research aspect of it. And maybe, I know there was a question that was answered in the chat, but maybe we just want to put up the last slide again, just to remind people that Dr. Helova is your main point of contact if you have any questions about this process. And so she's a great source of information, and she's has very responsive and has dealt with a lot of questions for people as they're preparing their proposals.
One thing that we probably didn't mention previously is a lot of these sections, for example, the biosketches, I don't know, the significance. We didn't go into details here, but there are lots of resources available online. And as we mentioned previously, we adapted the process and review criteria from NIH. So, you know, search those additional resources about how to best prepare that section and provide the information to the reviewers. So biosketch is a good example of that.
Okay. Well, we're going to place this, the PowerPoint and the recording on our website. So if you want to review the information later, or you know of anyone else who's interested, the information will be available. And we look forward to getting some great proposals this year, and you know, we look forward to expanding this program again in the future after we get this pandemic behind us and we are able to expand our work again. So, anything else, Anna, that we need to mention?
Yeah, I just wanted to pull up the timeline slides again. Our program announcement will be released on December 1st, and then the concept proposals are due February 1st. So there is time to prepare.
Yes.
So, yeah. And again, these slides and the recorded presentation will be available on our website for future reference. And we are here for you to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, thanks everyone. We'll give you back a nine minutes in your hour to to do something else. So, okay.
Yeah,
Bye bye.
thank you everybody for participating.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.